page. I'm doing the page that was part of National Scrapbooking Day. It's one of the challenges was to use tools. This came from Two Peas in a Bucket. They had a challenge to use 5 or more tools. And so I decided to do a page where I would use this Scallop stamp. This is the quintessential flower stamp from Stampin' Up. It is the current stamp, and it works with a whole bunch of different punches. You can punch out the outside layer, and then you can punch the inside layer out, and on and on and on. So I have a bunch of different punches out to work with. And my sketch reflects that because I have a group of circles, and it was a lot easier for me to draw these as real circles rather than scallop circles, but that's what they're going to be going across. And they're going to be kind of a little nest to hold my photos. I have 3 photos here that show a sequence of my husband and his grandson getting ready and then departing for fishing. So the photos are kind of at an angle, and that helps me fit them in since I'm going to need to do quite a bit of cropping. And also, you know, they have a structure to their fishing plan, but, you know, they have to play it by ear a little bit too. So I didn't want a real rigid kind of line of photos. I want it to be a little more casual layout. The very bottom edge, I'm going to do some scallop border down here to kind of represent the water, and the same thing up at the top edge. Right now I have a piece of gray cardstock as a background. I may leave that or I may change it to white. I haven't decided. The papers that I have to work with are from Pebbles Family Ties collection, these blues and yellows, and I also wanted to bring in some reds that go with some elements in the photo, and that collection didn't have any red, but I have Studio Calico's yearbook collection, and the papers have a similar, very similar texture and weight, and the look as far as the saturation of color I thought went really well. And I'm not going to need a ton of paper because I'm going to be doing a lot of stamping. And I did use those papers to get my various ink colors that I'll be working with and the different tools. So, and of course I'll need some lettering and things as we go along. So I'm going to get started by stamping a bunch of designs and punching those out and, you know, kind of getting my embellishment grouping.
Alright, I'm starting my stamping here. I have all of my tools laid out, different punches and several different inks and some white Stampin' Up cardstock that works really well with their type of paper. And now I'm just going to stamp the full image that I'll be punching out in the largest scallop size punch. I think it's 2 3/8 punch. And then I'm doing a second stamp of each of these colors because I know I'll be stamping some of the inside scallops and circles of each one. So I want to have at least 2 to start with, and I may need more as I go along. That's the Pool Party ink and the new type of stamp pads, which work really well. They all work well on the Stampin' Up paper. And I'm just laying them out here on the paper to kind of get an idea of whether I'm going to like that, and I think that I will. So I need to start building some clusters by stamping some of the, or punching some of the images with the smaller scallop punch. And it coordinates with this quintessential flower, so you get an inside scallop. And I even did 3 of the blue ones because that Pacific Point is such a deep ink. Rather than cleaning the stamp so many times, I went ahead and did 3 of it. I'll give you a little close-up here so you can see better the process for lining these up. And just layering them. They're not all going to get multiple layers, but I want to get several that have the colors kind of mixed up. Some, you know, that one I already had green on there, so I moved it over to another scallop, and then I'll lay those over and get an idea of whether I have enough or I'm going to need more of these different designs. So it looks like one of the things I may need is something to help with the color here, because these scallops are very bright in color, and I'm picking out some papers that will coordinate along the bottom. One of the papers from Pebbles has a branding strip that was the perfect yellow scallop, so I'm going to use it. And I really like this stripe because it has the colors in there, and I want to add a little bit of red, and I decided on the red wood grains as it's more solid rather than having so much white. The only thing I'm doing with the white in it is the stripe. And I'll put some of those on the bottom and then repeat them on the top. And I've added some solid circles underneath and some half scallops to kind of balance this out, because I felt like just all those little those quintessential stamped images were too many flowers, and it looked like flowers. The other thing I've noticed is that the photos are very dark, so I'm looking for ways to bring the photos out visually and the scallops back a little bit. So I'm thinking of distressing the edges of the scallop circles, and I've tried some samples here just with some leftovers. I did one in Vintage Photo, and then I did one in a gray ink from Stampin' Up, and the gray ink just looked dirty. So the Vintage Photo looked distressed, and that's really what I wanted. So I'm going to distress all of these different punched pieces and their components. And I really have to kind of work down in some of those scallops to get those to pick up the ink. And I've also added the distressing to the borders and things as well. And then for the photos, I'll put the white border around them to help them come out some, because they were a little bit dark. I have a brad that I want to use in the middle of one of those quintessential flowers to make it a little bit more prominent. Some of the full circles I think can go underneath. They don't have to be laying on top of the photos since they're a little bit larger. And I have some lettering that I'm about ready to start laying out here as well. I'm using some Amy Tangerine letters I'm just about out of, and to make my O, I've cut down the letter B, and since this has a little dashed line around it, I'm just going to take a marker and kind of fill in the dashes where they're missing, and it'll make kind of a wonky looking little O, but that goes with these letters because they're designed to be a little bit odd shaped. My N there is actually a Z turned on its side. Okay. And I'm ready for the word fishing to go across the bottom. I also have printed up my journaling, and I just printed it on some paper the same color as the background, and I have several small brads that I'm going to use next to the journaling strips. I have a couple of stickers I printed. These are October afternoon stickers that happen to match, one with a date and one with a place. Okay. And it's time to start arranging these things. And I just spend a few minutes here trying to figure out exactly which flowers I want laying where, and get everything ready to start gluing down, because I want the photos to look like they're sort of nesting inside those scallop circles. And I think adding the other circles and distressing and all kept them from looking so much like flowers, and they just look like bright embellishments. And I didn't want the blue on top of the blue, so I put the green over there. And I have that red brad that I want to use, so it really needs to go not on a red flower. I'm going to have to move them around a little bit here in a minute, making sure I have enough room for my letters. And there's my photo, and you can see that I have a break in the middle of my flowers, and or my scallop circles, and I try to move them over, but I liked the break. I thought it looked good, so I kind of left it that way. And here's where I'm swapping the colors so that the one on top will have the red brad in the middle. And I move the blue one over too. And I've got to trim this down once everything is glued. Now I don't normally show you adhering stuff with adhesive, but I wanted to show how I do this without taking everything off. The magnetic mat helps a lot. Of course, if it were laying flat on the table too, that would work. But I just put a little bit of glue behind each thing, and I can always go back later and tuck some glue dots in. And I do use dimensional adhesive for some of these embellishments. So I've put some of the scallops on there with tape runner, and then I'm adding dimensional adhesive for a couple of different ones. And I've got to add the brad to this one that didn't have the red color in it. These are my mind's eye brads. I buy them usually when Peachy Cheap runs a sale of a whole bunch of brads. I'll get several packs because they're really versatile. And here I'm tucking some glue dots in behind some of the ones where I couldn't quite get the tape runner to have enough room, and that'll secure everything down. Okay, so now it's time to put lettering on, and I usually adhere my lettering either with Tombow liquid adhesive or a Zig glue pen. The smaller things would go with a Zig glue pen. What I'm trying to decide now is where to put these little people. I wanted 2 little men icons and to represent my husband and his grandson, and I realized that I had 2 the same size, so hunting out the larger one to go with the smaller one, and then just figuring out whether they're going to go above or below the title, but somewhere down there in the lower right hand corner of the page. And I also have the sticker that indicates where they were fishing. So it really needs to go on below the word fishing because it says on lake. Okay, and then at the top I have another embellishment group here, or just a small area where I want to do a few strips. I have that scalloped edged yellow paper, or paper I trimmed with a scallop edge, and I'm adding a little bit more of the stripe paper to carry that to the top. I decided I liked that better than that washi tape, and I want a bit of red, and I have a couple of different washi tapes here. One that's a little more open that you can see through, and then a darker red, and I really liked that darker red when I was pulling it out and looking at it with the layout, but it's just too bold up there. Everything I did with it, small amount, large amount, just did not work. So I've ended up with the one that's a bit more transparent and not quite so much red. But I have a sticker here for the date. And this area still needs something. It needs something to balance with the bottom. It doesn't have anything circular, and I have all these circular things down towards the bottom, and it needs some other element. And since I have wood pieces down at the bottom, I think I'm going to use some of those at the top as well. So I found some wood embellishments that I'm adding at the top, and then just one in the middle over top of that brad to give it a little bit more dimension and emphasis there.
Let's look at the completed page. I added the little wood embellishments to complement these and kind of finish things off. For the sketch, I did the circles. I did leave a little break in mine, and I've arranged things somewhat different than what I had here, but this was just to kind of give an idea that I wanted the circles, and then the photos sort of nested inside of those. And my journaling and strips, I happen to have some paper the same color as the background, so I could do the strips rather than printing on the background, because I had everything laid out here and I really didn't want to have to move it to do that printing. A little bit of washi and punched board. The punching kind of got covered up, but there is a punched border underneath there and also along the bottom here. So let me show you a few close-ups. The big focus here, though, was mostly on those stamped and punched circles and doing some things to distress those and make those not quite so bold, and using the white border to brighten the photos up a little bit. So thank you for watching, and I hope you'll check out my blog for other projects.